Let's welcome back for the third time Ursula the doula. Ursula, you are just full of so much knowledge. Thank you so much for. A, do you want me to redo the beginning? Lem- I'm going to turn. No problem. Welcome back for the third time Ursula the doula. Congratulations on the recent nom. You your company was voted either top. What was it? The top doula agency in DC. That is amazing. How proud of you are you? How proud of you are you of your agency, of your staff? I mean, that's amazing and super exciting that now you're in Phoenix. So, spread the the love and the knowledge here. So, interesting, our conversation today, I did not do this on purpose, but social media is, it's a lot of work and our our the person who helps us is in the middle of I probably she's always it seems like she's always taking final exams, but we have not been able to meet up for our social media. So I have this amazing app, and anyone who has a company or is involved in social media, it's an app, I think it's AI generated, and it takes videos, full videos like off of YouTube, and makes posts that you could makes posts that from landscape into vertical. And I had taken a video that I had recently recorded and used that for my social media, and it was specifically on preparing for having a VBAC. And someone reached out and they're like, "What is a VBAC? Tell me more about a VBAC." And not just from like what does the VBAC stand for, but like overall, why is this something that we even have to discuss? Is this not a typical thing? So let's start there. And Ursula, just let's chat about what is a VBAC? What does it even mean? Why is it such a big deal? And what do people need to know about it? Absolutely. And you mentioned dismissing you. Why would someone feel that they were being dismissed in the first place? So, if someone would like to have a vaginal delivery after they've already had a cesarean delivery, do they need to go in there and say, "I would like a trial of labor," or what's the acronym again? Or okay. Mhm. Before we dive into just, like, what the pros and cons would be of having a VBAC, what oh, man, I have to edit this out. There was a question that came up, and, I know, I know. There was a question that came up, and it was what you were saying, but now I don't know. Mhm. It was something on the lines of, like, what would like, should everyone try for a VBAC or vaginal delivery? Like, why is there okay, I think it was more of a cultural question, like okay, got it. So before we go on to talking about the pros and cons of having a VBAC, what is the current cultural belief around vaginal births after a cesarean? I know early on in my training, so we're both from the East, and out here in Arizona, it's a bit more, I would say, granola than out east. And I was discussing having I think this exactly with one of my friends who's a labor and delivery nurse. She's like, this was years ago. This was in 2019. She was like, our doctors will not do a vaginal birth after someone had had a cesarean because it is just too risky. So you mentioned the study. Has that been the the belief is has that taken hold culturally, or do people naturally think like, okay, I've had a cesarean, I'd really like to have a natural or a vaginal birth next? Mhm. Mhm. Interesting. Interesting perspective, and interesting how these things can also capture the belief systems, not just in individuals, but bigger groups of individuals, families, and it can be generational. But that aside, who is an ideal candidate for a VBAC besides the 3 SCAR rule? Uh, you also mentioned health factors, so let's dive into that. Mhm. And you're saying these things have to be discussed or at least recognized during pregnancy. What about even beforehand, before getting pregnant? I think this is something that should be discussed or worked on prior to even getting pregnant, but, some people get pregnant without planning on it, and in that case. Mhm. Say again how early this conversation or this interview should take place. Is this before pregnancy or is this like 8 weeks 8 weeks gestation? Because I think, like, some providers won't even see people that early. Mhm. This is totally gonna start a rabbit hole. But, first, red flags. Can we agree it's if you're dismissed on the question, like, "Oh, don't worry about that." So that's a red flag. And then yeah, and then okay, second question. Scottsdale Shea Hospital. I've heard this over and over again from people who came into my office. Has the highest C-section rate. Is that true? Do you know anything about that? And why do certain hospitals have the highest C-section rate? Is that just a hospital that has the most providers delivering there? Because I could see that being the case as well. But do hospital C-section rates have anything to do with the provider? Okay. I have medical anxiety. I would consider myself very well, like, knowledgeable about health. I could have gone to medical school, and yet I dread talking to a lot of medical doctors, and I don't know if it's because I mean, I'm doing a lot of healing work right now, and there's certainly, like, adequacy issues and things that I've had that had to grow through, and so I'm sure that plays a role, but in general, I just feel dismissed 8 times out of 10 going to medical doctors. So and I know I'm not alone. A lot of my patients just they say they haven't gone to X physician in this amount of time because they feel like they're not heard. So if you have what advice would you give to me if I had to do this interview with multiple providers potentially? Like how do I go about it if I have white coat syndrome? What a great idea. Great suggestions. Sounds like many of us need to think about doing work on and thinking about this much earlier on than one would think. These are things, Ursula, this is why I bring you on the show. We're talking about things that no one's talking about in the medical community, or not many people are talking about. But these things have such an impact on your experience and how much stress that you're holding during your pregnancy, which undoubtedly affects your health and therefore potential. Absolutely. So back on track. So pros and cons of a VBAC. I am. Let's talk mom. Now, baby. How about just generally, well, I'm going to edit that out too. So, risk for mom, risk for baby. Anything anything else that would make a person either a better candidate or not? Like, is there certain health issues besides birth weight, number of scars on the uterus? Like, is someone who has autoimmune conditions just as safe to have a VBAC, or is that So I would expect there would be more, and it just sounds like mainly baby size, beliefs, position, and oh gosh, I would it is yeah, the fear is huge, but I would not recommend people challenging breech. I mean, if you wanna try to get the baby flipped earlier by I don't like the, medical route, I forget what it's called, aversion, but going I mean mhm, mhm. I'm glad you brought that up because staffing and experience does make a difference, like, the ECVs shouldn't be painful and aggressive, and so when I hear that and Mhm. So, that's a great segue into my next question. When someone is interested in having a VBAC, how do they find the right providers? Or what suggestions you already said interview them, but, like, what who should be part of the team, and what are some key things that an individual should be looking for? Great, great final statement on that because some of those support groups are not the most positive, but there's many great ones out there. Mhm, mhm, mhm. Okay, so finding the right provider team is of high importance. Now, what are other things that people can do? And we kind of talked about this, but what can people do to make sure that they're setting themselves up for the best chance of a successful VBAC? So, yeah, but you can't, if someone absolutely hates exercise or is completely thrives off of just total chaos and stress, they're not, can't necessarily force them to do the things, but solid four-legged stool. I love that you not only say body mechanic or exercise, but you say body mechanics. That is just something that I teach this core reconnect class. And I can't tell you how many times I hear this, not only just with the class, but with my patients are like, I've seen multiple PTs or different providers and no one has taught me how to move the way that you've taught me. Like they just give me these exercises and I'm like, you could look like one exercise could look the same across 20 people and be completely different in what they're actually like targeting based on their mechanics and all the exercise in the world don't matter if sure. Oh, right. Mhm. Sleeping on this. Mhm. Mhm. And the one that I love, but isn't as big of a problem during pregnancy, it's sleeping prone, like face down with one hip up, like twisted. And I'm like, I can't fix your back pain if we can't improve some of this sleeping. You're literally laying there for 6 hours at least. Anyways, so body mechanics throughout the day are just as important. So, mhm. Now, what about people with going into this pregnancy that have, whether this is their second pregnancy, third? I've had people that I've worked with, this is their third or fourth, their diastasis recti is substantial. I know what I do, but, and I've worked with doulas. I love the doulas who are open to working with me and hearing what I see and my knowledge. And then, because I'm not in the birth, what happens? What do you see in individuals who do have a significant diastasis? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I go to a CrossFit gym, and it's just the way that it's breath is just taught across the board is just, it's maddening. And it's interesting, like when I get to work with professional athletes, whether it be women or men or any of the, either, no one is breathing optimally. So it doesn't matter what level of athlete or what level of mover you are. This is, breathing is so much taken for granted, and it is so impactful. If you breathe the right way, everything typically just falls into place. You don't really have to think about bracing your core super hard or anything like that. But what do you see when people are pushing and they have diastasis, and then that's not supported, like the belly bulges out? Yeah, I figured that's what it would look like. Would it, have you ever used a rebozo? Okay. Mhm. Makes sense. Anything else, based on what you see, any recommendations that you would make for individuals with diastasis that are already pregnant? Besides, I mean, my recommendation is see someone like me, but I'm biased. Seriously. Like, it's best for the patient and it's best for the provider, and no one's feelings should get hurt by any means. Mhm. So, we've talked about quite a bit. We talked about what is a VBAC? What are the pros and cons of a VBAC? What are some considerations before even considering it? How to find a provider team, because that's super important. And then we just threw in there diastasis and the importance of being aware of it. What And I'm going to throw in there that I would suggest, instead of waiting till you're done having kids, get the rehab after each kid. It will life changing. If individuals listening to this podcast have questions, what's the best way they could reach out to you, Ursula? And if you have questions for me, you can reach out through my website as well at VaginaDocs.com, or on social media. We have contact forms. If you have questions, don't wait to get them answered. Ask them early. And then the question that I've asked you multiple times, Ursula, is what advice would you give to another individual to empower them in their pelvic health? Great advice. Thank you again for coming back onto the show, Ursula. You are just a wealth of information. Always love getting to chat with you. If you find this information helpful, don't forget to subscribe. And if there is any information that you would like to hear about in the future, reach out through our email, support@vaginadocs.com. Until next time, thank you so much for listening. Until next time on Real Talk with the Vagina Docs.